In this tutorial, I'm going to be going over the theme customizer with a focus on the header and navigation settings. Now there's a ton of settings in the Divi theme customizer related to your navigation menu and header, and using these settings in different combinations can yield some pretty cool and unique results. So I want to kind of dig deep into those settings and show you some cool things you can do. So to access the theme customizer, you're going to want to hover over the Divi link here in your WordPress dashboard and click the theme customizer panel. And this is going to launch the theme customizer with all the different settings. And today we're going to be focusing on the header and navigation panel. So if I open up this panel, you're going to get all the settings related to the header and navigation, being this top portion here, this white bar that has my primary navigation menu, and this secondary menu here that has my social icons and a secondary menu. Now if you have your social icons disabled and you haven't input a secondary navigation menu yet, then this bar isn't even going to show up at all. So you might not see this on your install, but if you assign a secondary nav in your appearances menus locations, then you're going to get that secondary bar, and you can adjust the appearance of that bar with the secondary menu settings over here. So I'm going to first focus on the header format. So these are just a few settings that will drastically change the appearance of your header. The first being vertical navigation, which is probably the biggest change. When you enable this, it completely switches the format of your header and puts it over on the side here vertically instead of horizontally, which is pretty nice depending on the look you're going for. And you can also choose to hide your navigation on scroll. So if I were to enable this, then the navigation disappears until you scroll down the page, which is kind of a fun effect. And it gives you more room to kind of experiment with your header and your sliders. So if maybe you have a full screen header on your homepage and you don't want to distract the user from that, well, you can turn off navigation until they scroll, and so like when they land on your page, they get this kind of like splash page effect with the full screen header, and then when they scroll down, their navigation menu slides in like that. Now, whenever you're changing settings, you get a live preview here, as you see. But until you save and publish, these settings aren't actually being affected on the home page. So if I were to exit out of here without saving anything and go back to my live website, you'll see that my vertical navigation was never enabled and my menu is not hidden right now. So going back to the customizer then, I'm going to explore some of these other settings. So heading back to the header navigation, I'm going to take a look at the different header styles. Now we have a couple choices here. Default, which puts the logo on the left. We have centered, which puts the logo and navigation centered, but places the logo on top of the navigation. And then we have a centered inline logo, which places the logo centered in between all of your navigation items. Moving on to the primary menu bar. Like I mentioned earlier, the primary menu is this white bar here, the larger of your two menus with the logo in it. And there's a bunch of stuff you can do here, such as hide the logo image. Maybe you just want to have that fade in later on when you scroll down. You can hide it from the primary nav menu. You can make your menu full width. In this case, my screen's kind of too small to show you, but let me show you. So I'm going to enable default and then go back to primary menu and make it a full width and save and publish, and then take a look at our home page here. I'm going to refresh. You can see that it just extends the logo to the edges here, all the way to the edge of the screen. If I were to expand this even more, which is hard to see for you, but yeah, you get that kind of full screen effect in the menu. All right, heading back to the customizer. Now, some cool stuff you can do with colors and font styles in the primary menu bar to really change, the appearance of your site. For example, you can increase the height. So if your logo feels a little bit too squished, you can make the menu bigger here. You can increase the text size as well, the letter spacing between the text. You can change the font itself and the font styles. Maybe I want to make this bold and uppercase. You can see we're getting a drastically different look here in our main menu bar. And you can adjust the colors as well. So let's say I want to, instead of using white, I want to make this, like a strong background color, like blue. So let's change the background color to blue. And since I've changed that to blue, I probably want to make my links more apparent. So I'm going to make those white. And if I were really doing this, I'd probably want to use a white logo as well, but I'm not going to bother changing that. You can imagine that's a white logo. And so yeah, there's some basic things you can do to kind of change the appearance of your primary navigation bar. But what I want to talk about next is the fixed navigation settings. And what these are, they affect your navigation bar in its fixed state, which means when it becomes attached to the top of your browser window. So if you notice when I scroll down here, the menu bar shrinks and becomes stuck to the top of the browser. We call that the fixed menu. So when it's fixed to the top of your screen, it is your fixed navigation, and then these fixed navigation settings can be used to customize the menu in that state, which means if you customize a color of your fixed navigation bar differently than you did your primary navigation state, it's going to transition into that. So we have a blue color for our background color right now. Let's say I change the fixed navigation to be green. In that case, it's going to fade from blue to green. You can also adjust the size, so as you can see, it's shrinking. If you want to make it shrink even more, you could bring down the size a bit, and then you can see you get really big drastic change in size. Or you could make it bigger if you want, for whatever reason, or just make it the same size as your primary navigation to have no transition in size. But I like me getting a little smaller. I think it looks nice. Another interesting thing you can do is use alpha transparencies in the colors. So, for example, if you have your big fixed navigation bar here and it's this bright green color and you can't really, you're worried that's kind of like obstructing the view of the page, well, you could just make it semi-transparent. For example, I might make it a semi-transparent black, bring down the alpha transparency, and then you can see through the menu, so it's not quite as distracting. And it transitions from that solid blue to this semi-transparent black. Now you can adjust the menu, the drop-down menus colors independently of the main menu bar. So for whatever reason you want your drop-down menus to be a different color, you can do that. So I'm going to change the drop-down menu background color to purple. And then when I hover over here, it's going to turn purple instead of blue. And you can do that for your secondary navigation menu as well. So speaking of that, let's take a look at some of these secondary navigation menu settings. Now, as I mentioned, the primary navigation is your big navigation bar here that has your primary menu and your logo, and the secondary nav sits above it. So much like your primary nav, you can make this full width if you like. So if you want to make those match, you can adjust the text size if you think that text is a little bit too small. You can adjust the letter spacing and the font style, all of that. So if we want to make it match a little bit more, we might make it all caps, increase the letter spacing, and increase the size, and they're kind of getting a more cohesive look. And just like the primary nav, you can adjust the background color. So if I want to make this something different, you can. I might make it purple. And you can adjust the drop-down menu background color independently for whatever reason you want to make your drop-down menu a different color. We're getting a lot of colors in here now. It's getting a little crazy, but just to show you what you can do. You can also adjust the animations that are used for the drop-down menus in both the primary and secondary headers. So if I want to make this like a slide effect, you can choose that, which looks nice. And you can do that for the primary navigation as well. Moving on to the header elements, this is where you can enable and disable items that appear in your navigation bar. So if you don't want to show the social icons or the search icon, you can disable those here, and you can adjust your phone number and email address that appear at the top here if you want to add your contact information. Now, so that was a basic overview of kind of all the different settings. Now there's also some cool things you can do, like using these settings in combination. One of the things that I like to do is change the header format to centered, and then use alpha transparency on the primary menu bar background color to bring down the opacity. So I'm going to go over to the background color. I'm going to change this to black, and then bring down the opacity to something a little bit lighter. So now we have this navigation bar at the very top of our page. We can even make it a little bigger. And since it's so big and it's centered, I've brought down the alpha transparency in the background. And now we have this effect where it's showing through to the background. So, for example, if I were to save and publish this and head over to our main site and actually adjust the builder settings for this page, there's some cool effects you can get with background images. So I might, let's say this is the home page of my site, I might want to use a nice background image for my slider here. So I might go over to my slider and upload a new background image for this area. And update. And so now we have this background image in our slider, and we have this transparent menu that kind of overlays it. And Divi is really smart about knowing when you use a transparent background image for your primary navigation bar, and we automatically extend the height of the first section on your page so that it has the opportunity to overlay like this without actually obstructing your content. So it's not going to overlay, the text on your slider and that kind of stuff. So you can even bring down this transparency to 0 and kind of have this cool effect where you have this, kind of floating menu and navigation. Then when you start to scroll down, it becomes fixed and shrinks to the top of your page like that. That's one example of kind of a cool way you can use these settings in combination. And it looks good with the centered inline format as well. So if I change to centered inline logo and check out that, that's a pretty cool effect as well, as you can see. So yeah, that's a basic overview of the header and navigation settings. There's a lot you can do here. So I encourage you to experiment and have fun playing with these settings. In this tutorial, I'm going to walk you through the Divi theme customizer with a focus on the general settings and general typography and layout settings. So there's a lot of stuff you can do with the typography settings and the layout settings in the theme customizer to make kind of like large sweeping changes to your entire site, such as changing your fonts and font sizes and colors and all that stuff. And it'll really save you a lot of time using the customizer as opposed to creating a child theme and so on. So to activate the theme customizer, you're going to want to head over to your dashboard, look for the Divi link, and then hover over it and click on the theme customizer link. This will launch the theme customizer with all the different settings. And we're going to be focusing on the general settings in this tutorial, but I also have tutorials for all the other areas here, so be sure to check those out if you want additional information. So I'm going to open up the General Settings tab, and it's going to give me the various settings available here, categorized into 3 different sections: layout settings, typography, and background. Now, layout settings, you can do a lot here, and most of this stuff is related to kind of sizing and spacing of your layout. So you can enable box layout, which will change the kind of look of your site completely and place it in this box. And you can adjust the content width as well, so you can make your box bigger or smaller. In this case, I need to extend my screen so you can actually see this. But yeah, you can adjust your website content width, so you can make it bigger and smaller with that slider there. Moving on, we have the gutter width, which will affect the space between columns. So if you want to increase or decrease the space between the columns in your rows, you can do that with the gutter width. And so I can bring those down or move them up a bit like that. And if at any time you want to reset, back to the standard setting, you can just click the reset button right there. Sidebar width, this will adjust the width of your sidebar on your blog posts and category pages. Section height, this will adjust the height between sections, so the padding that exists at the top and the bottom of each section, you can kind of make that bigger or smaller. You have a few different sizes here that you can choose from. So if you think there's too much space between my sections, I want to make it a little smaller, just go ahead and bring those down a bit here. And we also have the same exact control for row height. So I'm sure you're familiar with sections and rows, but there's a default spacing, just between each row and between each section that kind of separates the modules within those. And if you want to adjust that, you're free to do so. So here you can see kind of the two rows here. I have this row with an image and the row with a text module, and I'm decreasing the spacing between those rows. Next is your theme accent color, which is kind of your general, the general color you like to associate with your design, and it kind of gets applied in various areas like your header and like active menu links and that kind of stuff. So you want to change your accent color, you can do that here. The next section is typography. So there's a lot you can do here, such as adjusting your header fonts and body fonts, the sizes of the text, their colors, the letter spacing, line spacing, and so on. So with just a few clicks here, you can really give your site a completely different look and feel. So for one, if you want to increase the text size, make it a little bit readable, just slide the slider here, and all the text on your site is going to scale up and down proportionally. And you can do the same thing with your header text size. So if you want to make all your headers a little bit bigger, just slide that slider up and down until you kind of have a size you feel comfortable with. You have line height as well, so you can kind of increase and decrease the spacing between paragraphs, lines in paragraphs, I should say. You can also adjust the letter spacing between your headers. So if you want to add a little bit more space between the letters, sometimes it's nice to do in headers to kind of give it a different kind of like, layer of hierarchy. It just separates it from the body a little bit more because it looks different. So we can maybe bring down the text size and then increase the letter spacing, which as you see will increase the spacing between the letters. And this kind of looks nice sometimes when you combine it with making it all caps and bold, and then bringing down the text size a little bit, kind of getting a nice unique look there. Now you can adjust the font as well. So if you want to completely change the font for your headers versus your body text, by default we use Open Sans, but if you want to change that to something else, you can. And that's really going to kind of, change the attitude of your site quite drastically. Next we have, some color options. You can change the colors of your links and your text. So if you want to change your header font colors to something different, just head on down to the header text color option. You can play with different colors here or choose your own. And you do the same for body text as well. Some people think that this gray might be a little bit too light for them, in which case you might want to just bring it down to like a darker, something closer to black. It's up to you. So it's a basic overview of the typography settings and the layout settings, which is kind of the biggest part of this general settings tab. And the next is the background section. So you can upload your own background image here or adjust the background color. And this really only kind of matters if you're using the boxed layout. Otherwise, there's kind of like your site is dominated by the background colors of your sections. But once you enable boxed layout, as I will here, you can see there's kind of some space behind the box for your background image and background color to show through. So if I were to change that, you can see it update in the background there. Yep, so that's a basic overview of the the general settings, including the layout settings and typography settings for Divi, included in the Divi theme customizer. In this tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to use the Divi theme customizer to customize the appearance of your website for specific mobile devices. The Divi theme customizer allows you to adjust text sizes, header sizes, and spacing for individual mobile device types. So you could have a different, sized body font on smartphones if you think that, maybe the text needs to be a little bit bigger to be easier to read. And then maybe you want a little bit less big on tablet and maybe a little bit even smaller on desktop. So you can adjust all those accordingly, as well as different padding and height values on your site. So to get started, we're going to enter the theme customizer by going to the WordPress dashboard, Look for the Divi tab here and then click the Theme Customizer link. And this will launch the Theme Customizer with all the hundreds of settings that we have here. But in this tutorial, I'm going to be focusing just on the Mobile Styles panel, which has all the mobile styling options. If you want to learn about all this other stuff, we have separate tutorials for general settings, header navigation, buttons, and so on, as well as just a general overview tutorial of the Theme Customizer. So be sure to check those out if you want to learn more. And in this case, I'm going to be clicking on the Mobile Styles panel to launch the Mobile Styles Customizer. And as you see, it gives you a nice preview here depending on what type of style you're editing. So if you want to edit phone styles, it's going to shrink down and give you a phone size preview. If you want to edit tablet styles, it's going to expand back to a tablet style size. And so we have various settings here that we can adjust. We can increase the body font size, increase or decrease the header size as well. And then in addition, you can adjust the spacing between sections and rows. So if you want to decrease this or increase it, maybe you think that there's too much wasted space here for your taste, you can bring down the section height and also the row heights as well. So you can adjust the distance between individual rows, as you can see there, all the way down to nothing if you like, and as well as sections. And if any time you don't like what you've done, you want to go back to the default styles, just click these reset buttons and it'll revert all the changes you've made. Next is you can go into the phone and also adjust these independently from the tablet style. So all of these will work on their own and overwrite each other as you reduce your screen size down to each of these breakpoints. And again, you can do the same stuff. You can increase and decrease the body and header font size, as well as the section padding and row padding. Finally, we have the mobile menu. When your site breaks down to mobile device size, the menu changes, and it gives you the standard hamburger icon, and the menu slides down altogether, unlike how you see in desktop where all the links are in a row here, and they each have their own drop-down menus. But you can customize all of this as well, so you can change the background color if you like, and change the text color like that. And you can hide the logo image as well, which I might want to do at this point because my logo image doesn't go so good with this background color. I'd probably want to upload a white image in this case if I was going for a dark blue background. Yep, that's a basic overview of the mobile styles customization in the Theme Customizer. And you can see here how you can create different mobile experiences for different devices using the customizer settings. In this tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to use the Divi module customizer. Now, Divi comes with two customizers: the theme customizer, which is used to adjust site-wide settings like the body and header text of your entire website. But on the other hand, there's also the module customizer, which is used to adjust the styles of individual modules across the entire website. For example, if you don't like the size of the slider, maybe you want to make it a little smaller, you think all of your sliders are taking up a bit too much space, well, you can head over to the module customizer, reduce that padding, maybe reduce the size of the header text, and so on, and then every time you add a new slider, it's going to adhere to those styles. So first things first, let's access the module customizer, and to do that, you're going to want to head over to your WordPress dashboard, and then find the Divi link, hover over it, and then click the module customizer button. This is going to load up the module customizer, and on the left you're going to see a list of all the modules that come with Divi. And if you open up any of these tabs, you're going to get a list of settings for that module. And these settings are limited to usually text sizes, styles, and also some spacing adjustments. Of course, you can always adjust just about anything related to a module by opening up the module settings, the individual module settings, and adjusting the advanced settings in the advanced settings tab. But if you want to do something a little bit quicker and simpler, and like I said, adjust basic font styles and spacing, then you can do so in the the module customizer. And when you edit something in the module customizer, it affects the modules on your entire website. So it's if you want to make one change site-wide, this is a much better way to do it. So like I said, let's say I wanted to reduce the size of this slider. Well, I can head over to the full width slider panel here, which will reveal the various settings that are available for this module, and I can reduce the padding by sliding down the padding. I can reduce the header size, and I can even adjust, some styling here. Maybe I want to make it bold and all caps like that. And you can see with a few clicks here, we've done everything that we wanted. We reduced the size, changed the style a little bit, reduced the header size, and now every time I make a new slider, it's going to look like that. So, and you can kind of do this for just about every module. So heading into, let's say, the blurbs. If you want to make all your blurbs titles a little bit bigger or smaller, you can do that, and you can see the live change here. And yep, you can do the same thing for just about every module. So here I have my counters. Head over to the number counter, and I can adjust, the font styles here. So maybe I don't want it to be underlined. Maybe I want it to be a little bit bigger or smaller. Maybe smaller and bold would look nice. Yep. So yep, you can do that for just about every module, like I said. So yeah, I'm not going to bother going through every single module here because most of the settings are pretty similar, and what you can do is pretty similar. So if you ever find yourself, wanting to adjust the style of a certain module, to head over to the module customizer and take a look at the settings that are available to you. In this tutorial, I'm going to be walking you through the theme customizer, but in particular, I'm going to be focusing on the button styles that we have for you in the Divi theme customizer. And these button styles affect all the buttons on your site. And here's an example of a button right here that appears in the slider. And so you can adjust just about everything about these buttons. And there's so many options that the effects you can achieve are quite varied. And so that's why I'm going to kind of go over each option and kind of show you some different cool combinations that you can use. So the first thing you're going to want to do is head over to your theme customizer by going to the dashboard, looking for the Divi link in your sidebar, and then clicking on the theme customizer to launch the customizer. And once it loads up, you're going to want to look for the buttons tab on the left here. And so click on buttons, and this is going to bring you to the button section of the theme customizer. And we've separated these settings into two areas. There's the general button style and then the button hover style. So the button style is what you see all the time here, and the hover style is what you see when you hover it over with your mouse. And whenever two settings differ between the button style and the hover button style, well, there's that difference is going to transition, creating a nice animation effect. And so let's just go through each of these settings so I can give you an idea what to do. The text size will increase the text size, but also increase the button size as a whole. So if you want to make your buttons larger, this is the setting you want to adjust. So you can make your buttons quite large. You can adjust the text colors if you want to make it something else like red or yellow or whatever. And you can adjust the background color as well. So I could perhaps make this button green instead of transparent. And I want to bring up the alpha transparency here to full. And then obviously this yellow that I chose earlier is clashing pretty heavily, so I'm going to turn that back to white. And so now I have a green button with white text. You can adjust the border color, so maybe you want to make this like a darker green or something like that, or a lighter green. You could do that and then increase the border size as well. So now we're getting a completely different look for a button. And you can just remove this border as well. So sometimes I like to just remove the border altogether, bring down the border width to 0, and kind of keep a cleaner, flatter look. You can adjust the border radius, and what this does is adjust the roundness of the corner. So if you want to make a square button, you can bring that border radius down to 0, and you can make it more and more circular, all the way to the point where the edges become half circles like that. So if you want to create a circle button, just slide that border radius all the way to the right. Next up is our letter spacing, so we'll adjust the spacing between the letters. So the bigger the spacing, the bigger the button gets. And then you have your button style, font style options, which includes bold, italic, uppercase, and underlined. And yep, so you can toggle all those off individually, on and off individually. I tend to like the combination of bold and all caps with a little bit of letter spacing like that, which looks nice. You can also change the fonts if you want to get a little more creative with your font. By default we use Open Sans, but there's a lot of great fonts here to choose from. So if you want your button to kind of stand out, maybe draw people's eye a little bit more, you might want to use a font that differs from the body font of your site. So I changed to Arvo. Next, you can choose whether or not you want to use an icon. So if you don't want to have an icon, you can go ahead and turn that off, and then you won't get that hover effect with the icon. If you do choose to use an icon, you can choose the icon itself. So by default, we have that arrow. But if you want to use anything else, you're free to do so. So you can see the icon has changed, and you can choose between all of our icons, which Divi comes with our own elegant icon font that we created just for Divi. So we have a bunch of great icons here that you can choose from. You can also adjust the icon color independently of your fonts. If you want to make this something else, you can. Maybe I want to make it like a dark green and keep my text white. That's kind of a nice effect. And you can choose the direction of your icon too, whether it be on the left or the right. So if you want to make it on the left, you can. If you have kind of like a more symbolic icon here, like here I have this light bulb, it kind of makes more sense to have it on the left, whereas arrows kind of work more on the right because they're more directional. And depending on the arrow you choose too, like if you have an arrow pointing to the left, well, you might want to put it on the right of the text. Like this arrow here makes a little bit more sense over there than it would on the right side. I'm going to change back to something else. Okay, you can also choose whether or not to show the icon only on hover or have it always appear. So if you choose no here, the icon's just going to be there all the time. And if you only show it on hover, then it's only going to appear when you hover over it. Now, where stuff gets really fun is when you start adjusting the button hover styles. So if you open the button hover styles panel, here's where you can change things for when someone hovers over the button with their mouse. And like I said, when something differs, you get a nice transition. For example, if I want to make the background color change, I could maybe change this to yellow. And then when I hover over it, it's going to fade to yellow from green. You can adjust the border color as well if I had a border, but I don't. And you can adjust the border radius independently as well. For example, putting it down to 0 would mean it transitions from square to circle. And the letter spacing, you can do some crazy stuff with the letter spacing if you want to like make your button grow. It's kind of fun. And you can use alpha transparency here. So like all of our color settings come with an alpha transparency slider if you want to make it transparent. So maybe the hover style is like a clear, black color like that. That looks cool. Yeah, so lots of stuff you can do when you start playing with these different settings, and you can really give your site a unique look. And yep, that's a basic overview of the button customizer settings in Divi.